Schwan had asked me to admit you, and I was hoping that I set this up so I didn't have to let people in. But apparently I do. That means I'm going to have to pay attention to everybody that's joining.
Nobody show up yet, huh?
Oh, no, but Mauro is joining us right now, which is awesome.
Hello, guys.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing very well. Thank you much.
Fantastic.
Mauro, I'm Aaron Stratton. I know it says Northern Virginia Bonsai Society under my face, but that's because I'm the president and I get to own the Zoom account.
Perfect.
Good morning. It's good to have you here. We're very excited to have you joining us.
I'm happy to be here with you guys. Thank you so much. And sorry again for the misunderstanding of last weekend.
Yeah, not a problem. I mean, this stuff happens. I was actually talking with somebody after last Saturday and saying, you know what? I mean, I think in all the years that I've been with this club, like that type of thing happens very rarely. And I'm not, this is not pointing at you at all. It's like, considering all the logistics that we deal with on a regular basis, we actually do quite well in terms of getting our meetings pulled off. So
no, it's crazy because I always sign everything on my agenda, and this month has the same day also next month. So it was like talking about Saturday 20 was, I don't remember, 20, and it's the same the next month because this year February is different days. And we totally lost. I was talking about March, he was talking about February, and no problem.
Right. Well, if you need to test your camera or anything like that, feel free.
I don't know. I don't see myself. I just see you. Let me see. Can you see me?
No, there's a.
Oh yeah, we don't see you now.
Perfect.
Excellent.
Let me see. Okay. Let me check because I have the tripod with the camera. Okay, let me see if you can see the tree well. Let me bring the tree forward. Okay.
That's pretty good.
Perfect. Fantastic.
What tree is it, Mauro?
Sorry again?
What tree is it? What
It's
kind of tree?
Carpinus betulus. That is the English translation is white Carpinus for you. Is a subvariety of Carpinus that is typical of the mountain area here in the northern of Italy, also northern of Europe in general. A little bit different from the coastal variety that is called Carpinus orientalis, has a little bit smaller leaves. But this type of tree is very good for bonsai here. Is used pretty frequently from amateurs to professional because they are very generous, they grow strong, and they are easy, to restart from the trunk and rebuild the foliage completely.
Yeah, we have a hornbeam that grows here. Hornbeam is a common name that's used for it in the U.S. And the hornbeams that grow in the U.S., I mean, like I could literally like walk over here into the woods and find some. So they're very common.
Yeah, the same
larger leaf here than like the Korean hornbeam, but yeah, really nice material to work with.
Yeah, basically I grow 3 different variety of hornbeams. The Korean one, Carpinus tuscanovi, then the Carpinus orientalis, and Carpinus betulus, that is this one.
Excellent.
So guys, are we waiting 5 minutes so all the people will join? How you think?
Yeah, I have 9:52 right now, our time, and we're starting at 10 o'clock is our announced schedule. So we've got 8 minutes where I'm sure a lot.
Fantastic. Okay, let me just set. Let me see if I do this. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic, fantastic.
Yeah, so when we get to 10 o'clock, I might give it a minute or two to let people join. I'll do a quick welcome. We don't have a lot in the way of announcements or anything today. We do have a board meeting this afternoon that I'll remind people about in case they want to join us for that. But I'll be pretty quick about it. And then assuming that that Rich has joined us by that point, he expressed interest in actually introducing you. So we'll turn things over to Rich to introduce you, and we'll be able to get you started pretty quickly. And I understand you have something at noon, so you have to kind of have a hard cutoff around noon.
See, yeah, I have 2 hours and then another 2 hours, another demo.
Great, very good, very good.
I'm here with 2 students. They will help me on the work, so I will be more entertaining about talking and blah blah blah. So that's perfect.
Nice.
How is the situation with Corona there?
Getting better. We're struggling with vaccinations, and not really struggling, but there wasn't a plan. There wasn't a good plan. And so vaccinations are being done in different ways in every locality, which is kind of nuts. Our numbers are improving, but they're still, in terms of cases and deaths, they're still above where we were like last summer.
Oh, wow.
And stuff. So it's, I don't think the country's done a great job in general, but
yeah, but here is the same,
trend.
And Europe is the same, so it's crazy. Yeah, I was planning to try to come over on April, from April to May, but I don't know. We will see if I can come over just with the, the proof I'm not positive on the Corona, and then be able to work for a month there. I will come. Otherwise, I will stay home also this year. But I miss to come and do my tour in US, actually.
I'm actually curious about how the weather here in Northern Virginia compares to where you are. And I was looking at a map last week, trying to get some estimations. You're in a pretty northern part of Italy, up against the mountains, am I right?
See, I'm in the middle of the mountain, actually, in the middle of the Dolomites. So we have a very high mountain range, like 1 hour from my place, but even from my place over is called a pre-Alps. So is a kind of a higher elevation mountain. And then in the back, they have the tallest one. But now is starting spring. We are lucky because, we are still in the south of Europe. So spring start middle February. We have a beautiful day today. 2 of my students came. We went out collecting some trees, and then we did some repotting. And the temperature was like 12 Celsius. That is probably 64 Fahrenheit, maybe. Something like that.
Yeah, we've actually just had some. We're at the tail end of a pretty significant cold snap across the U.S. In fact, and I've got snow and ice on the ground outside here, but we expect some warmer temperatures coming up this week as well. So things will definitely start popping as they always.
Yeah, sure.
February?
Yeah, I normally go in Harrisburg in Pennsylvania at early April before my birthday, and then I spend my birthday in New York. New York is actually a little bit colder than Harrisburg.
Okay, right. Good morning, Rich.
Good morning. Hey, Mauro, how are you?
Hello, Rich. How are you?
Oh, great.
Perfect. Good to talk to you.
I guess we're going to miss you at Doyle's place this year.
Probably. I was just saying I'm not sure if I will be able to fly over on April, May. We will see.
I got to find some time to fly over to you.
Yeah, come over in August for the intensive.
We're gonna eat this and be done with it. Here we go.
We'll give it a couple more minutes at least to let some additional people join us, and I was saying a couple minutes ago, we'll probably get started pretty quickly today. I'll remind folks of the board meeting and then turn it over to you, Rich, to introduce Mauro.
All right.
Sì, possiamo partire da qua e fare questi due. Sto puntini con lei. Dopo prendete delle forbici tagliate come cazzo è cassato qua. Ma voglio, prima io vi parlo un po' e poi faccio un po' di
Oh, the demo is going to be in Italian, by the way, today.
Exactly.
What's our time difference? What time is it there in Italy?
4. It's 4
4
p.m.
o'clock? So 6-hour time difference.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be
time
really
there?
angry if he starts bringing up some food that I can't have.
10 a.m.
Yes.
Sono su sto spaccare il martello qua, tutto mette centro una vite. Facciamo una demo diversa oggi usando l'ascia.
Has anybody, while we're waiting, has anybody heard from Richard Buck anytime recently?
Così detto.
From who?
Richard Buck?
No.
Oh, yes, I did. I emailed him last night. He sent a detailed message during the week about his plans being canceled. He had planned to take a cruise to Japan and had a tour arranged with the private gardens.
Yeah, he's a cruise meister.
Yeah. But yeah. Well, I have been concerned about him also. Checked in with him.
Hey, Mauro, you might want to mute yourself.
Sorry again?
You might want to mute yourself while you're talking to your colleague.
Sure.
No, I asked Jack because I got what I think, well, I know was some kind of spam phishing message from him, but not really from him, right? So,
Is this Dick?
yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
Good morning, everybody.
I'm hurt. I didn't get any spam from him. Yeah, Joe, Mauro was out collecting this morning already.
Who?
Mauro. He's had a full day. And we're going to have to start pretty promptly because he has to cut off exactly at noon. So.
And with that little nudge, let me say good morning to everybody. I'm happy to see you all join us, even though we had to reschedule from our usual second Saturday meeting. I'm sure additional people will join because that is our norm, where several of us are here right on time, and a few more people maybe have that calendar invite bing bong at 10 o'clock and then they sit down to their computer. But good to see you all. I always enjoy seeing your faces and your names pop up onto these. It's not quite the same as coming together in person, but always a pleasure to see you guys. I am super excited for today. I don't know about the rest of you, but I've enjoyed watching Mauro's YouTube videos for a long time, and definitely take advantage of opportunities to hear from him. But I am not the official introducer today, and I'm gonna let Rich do the honors and introduce Mauro. The only announcement that I have before we do that is just a quick reminder that we do have a board meeting this afternoon. It's at 1 o'clock. I did send out the link, a Zoom link to join that meeting midweek this week out to all the membership. And of course, members don't have to attend, but you're welcome to. And so I'm just sharing that with you in case you'd like to be part of that conversation and the things that we're discussing at the board meeting this afternoon. But that's the only announcement I was going to add this morning. So without further ado, Rich, I'll allow you to introduce our guest today.
Great. Well, thank you, Aaron, and welcome to everybody that's on the Zoom call. So I have the pleasure to introduce Mauro. I've condensed his very long bio into a couple of high points. So first and foremost, he's from Fertilizer, Italy. Did I say that right?
Exactly. Thank you.
Good. He is professionally, he's an architect and also a bonsai artist. I think he started his bonsai journey when he was just 14 and did a lot of what I did, but did it better, and did a lot of workshops with many different professionals and really honed his talents. I think it was in 2005, you can show your sweatshirt there. He founded Italian Bonsai Dream, and that is his place of business where him and a lot of students study and work and produce some lovely trees. He's written for a variety of bonsai magazines. He's been president of the Italian Bonsai Association. He's doing, and where I met him, he's been doing demonstration and workshops at bonsai clubs all over the world. Name a country, he's probably been there. He's won multiple prizes from 2005 on to now. And I'm proud to say, and most importantly, he's a friend of mine. I've taken several workshops from him and with him. He's got a keen sense of design. I know that he demands the highest degree of technical expertise, particularly over wiring. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. He's a great teacher. He's got a great sense of humor. And of course, he's Italian. So when you don't understand him, at least it sounds good. So I'm looking forward to hearing from him today and working and improving my trees with this help. And with that, I'm going to give you Mauro. Take it away.
Hello, guys. Thank you so much for the great introduction. I miss the workshop we have every year at Jim Doyle and Nature's Way, but hopefully the time will come again and we can see each other. So I'm here today in my workshop in Italy with two of my students and a nice Carpinus betullus, Italian horbeam. Typical tree from my area. We have a lot of them in the hills around where I live. It's a typical material. A lot of amateurs love to grow here in the area. Very generous tree, very easy to grow and very easy to work. So I thought in order to have a good demonstration, mixing a little bit of technique, a little bit of, preparation and strategy into the bonsai field, and also obviously the number one theme also for me that is what on the industry, because wise we can basically
Is it just me or we're losing him?
I think that's several of us. We are having a bad.
Yeah, we've all lost the contact.
Mauro, if you
So-
can hear us, you're frozen up. Maybe we take, I don't know. You know more about this, Aaron, than I do, but maybe if people turn off their video, we get a little better bandwidth.
that may be the case, and I'm happy to do that as well. I did go through and mute a bunch of folks, but let's give that a try and we can see if that'll improve. And it could just be a connection thing, and I'm sure that we'll have him read.
Guys, can you see me?
Yep, you just came back to us, Mauro. You did cut out for a minute there.
Oh, okay. So I want to show you a good 360 degrees of the tree. This tree was collected 4 years ago and was just chopped. Couple of big and tall branches at the top and one side one was chopped. We was interested on preserving the good base of the tree. You can see nice roots going in all the direction, making the base of the tree nice and interesting. And then what we did last year as preparation was a little bit of carving on some part of the trunk to start rebuilding taper, and then start also a nice and first selection of the branches. You see, we have good branches almost in every position we need to create the future, structure of a nice bonsai. So, when we look for the deciduous tree, and actually this morning we was collecting the deciduous. Winter is a great time. End of winter is a great time to collect the deciduous trees. We always look at the trunk because the deciduous are, such generous trees that is very easy to rebuild the foliage and rebuild all the structure just from scratch, differently from, what we do on conifers that is looking for trunks and good branches that by bending branches we can rebuild the structure. Here you can see after the tree was collected and chopped, the tree regrew a lot from the trunk. I did a selection of the branches. I kept some that I thought were in good position to create a nice structure. And then what we're gonna do now is it will be to do the second wiring on the tree. And also we're gonna do some work to start getting the defect of the tree better, especially one of the roots as a kind of the ugly start. Here is, hope you guys can see. When we collect the deciduous tree, sometimes we have to chop thick roots, and then they normally start dying on the upper part because there is no sap coming from the old cut. But we have good side roots. They keep the root alive. In this case, what I'm gonna do, I will start carving a little bit by hand tools this section to make it nicer. And also on the top of the tree, when was done at the basic, flat cut of the top to reduce the height of the tree, we have a lot of dead wood. I don't like too much dead wood on Carpinus. I prefer to have a hollow part. So I will be reducing some of the dead wood here with a chisel, just to rebuild a little bit more the taper up to what will be the new top of the tree that is in this area. As you could see during the 360, we have a nice nebari here. The trunk is coming towards us. There is already the substitution of the apex here, and another branch in the right side that will be our right trunk, we can call it. Sorry?
I think that might just be somebody's background noise, Mauro.
Okay. Let me know if you have any questions.
And I just did sliced onions, little slices of red bell pepper, green bell pepper,
So,
sliced mushrooms, which I adore.
what I want to do is reclaim a little bit the and unnecessary branches that obviously the tree during the last year of growth shoot out, especially when I have some triplets. You can see some area here with a lot of strength. I did some selection already, but the tree shoot another branch. So I don't want to allow the three branches coming out from the same spot. So I always prefer to keep one or two, in this case, two. So I will keep the two stronger one. When I work on the structure of a tree, I prefer to always give energy to the stronger branches and remove the weaker ones because I want branches that have a lot of energy to grow and create a structure as fast as possible. And then when the structure will be set, probably in the next couple of years, I will start reducing and create volume by using the smaller branches. So for now, I'm more interested in branches that are super strong. Another example here, in the side, I have a point with three branches, basically two growing side by side and two growing very close to each other. So again, one of the two growing too close, they have to go, and I will keep the other two. Other branches that start from the base of a strong one and going up straight away, I am also competing with other branches that have to go because I don't want to create areas of competition, especially when I build the structure. I want to see, because this is a deciduous tree, so all the defect in the structure will be very visible in winter when we're gonna show the tree in winter silhouette. We have always to think about that when we work on a deciduous tree. We don't do tricks to hide the defect as we do on conifers. It's always better if we have a defect to remove it, because otherwise, if we work the tree around that defect, thinking it will disappear or people will not see it, we always fail because the tree will be shown in the winter silhouette, and all the defect in the structure of the tree, they will pop out straight away. So my advice is, especially when we start a material from scratch, is always good to remove everything is not necessary and deal only with good branches. Any question?
I'd actually love to ask for a little more comment on where you're leaving two branches coming out. I think when we hear and read just about anything in terms of bonsai design, they're always talking about make sure you don't have more than one branch coming off the trunk in a spot, and being careful that your branching beyond there is not more than two, but letting two branches come out from the same spot is a little contradictory to what you kind of see in the norm.
Yeah, it's just a basic rule about saying only one branch in one spot. Actually looking for, naked deciduous tree in the wild, especially around my area, I always see couple of branches coming from the same spot, and they look so natural to me. That is something I try to kind of mimic and repeat on some of the tree I work, because I consider that an interesting feature that some trees have, especially when those branches, they don't come just out straight, but generally for the competition, one branch goes down and one branch goes up, creating a nice angle between the trunk and the two branches. They give, to my opinion, kind of a natural flow to the tree, and is something I like to add on the trees that I work, if I can, obviously, and if they don't bother me in terms of aesthetic. But I don't consider the two branches from one spot a defect. Okay, so what I want to do, I will bring my table closer, and so hopefully, puoi tirare sul tavolo per favore, Matteo? No, devi premere. Okay. So I want to just create a little bit of a V shape on top of this root. This is the root I was talking originally that was flat cutted here. And what I want to do, already the tree lost the upper part because obviously there are no roots here. And any roots came out, no roots came out here because the soil level is lower. And also, being such a big roots, be able to carve and start carving a V shape between the two live line that are present side by side. I can start taking away a little bit of that visual strength that the root has. You can see the difference from this root here, that is a nice and you know, in a nice proportion to the trunk, and a little bit this one is over proportionate. Also, the other one I have in this side is much better with the tree division going up. So basically, I hope that doing this, I can take away a little bit of strength from these roots. Mi puoi dare un nero? I want to mark with a black marker just the area that I have in mind, you know, a little bit today, and probably I will do some more work in the future. The area that I want to remove, creating this V shape, so I can basically carve the inner part of the roots and give the idea that that roots is already divided in two for the future. So I have a V shape chisel. Let me see if I can show you. Okay. And then I can start removing the upper part. You see the wood is still alive, even if it's been already 3 years that root was chopped, because Carpinus is a very generous tree. So by removing lì tra gli attrezzi, un coltello normale. By removing the upper part, I can easily also rebuild the taper of the roots, because as we try to have a nice taper in the branches, we want also to have the superficial roots with a good taper, because otherwise, if as for the trunk, we keep parts that are cylindrical and straight, those are roots that has the same character. There will be always very high catcher when we are trying to appreciate the overall shape of the tree. When we, you know, my idea when we create a bonsai is we don't have, especially an elegant tree, as I expect a deciduous tree, we don't have to allow the part of the tree that can be too loud visually. Otherwise, they will kind of try to take advantage of other part of the tree. For example, has the foliage. The foliage is nice, elegant, especially when, as I said, we can appreciate the winter silhouette. So if we have a part of the trunk or part of the roots that are too aggressive visually, those parts will always take away the interest from the trunk and the foliage. So what I want to do, you see, I remove the bark, and then I try to go in and dig into the wood so I can remove the inner part. It's good to use this type of chisel because I can carve some lines and I can remove just the dead wood I want. I have another chisel that is more flat. That chisel is better, you will see later, when I have to just remove a part of flat wood. You see here the difference from the chisel that is a V shape and the chisel that is flat. The flat one is good eventually if I have to just go inside from the side and remove straight in. I hope you guys can see. If you don't have a good view, I can ask one of my students to take the phone and show closer. Puoi prendere il telefono e metti sopra, vediamo. Benissimo. Here we are. So you see, I try to go in, follow the line, and slowly remove part of the wood. And by doing that, I can also, working with the chisel, rather than working with a electrical carving tool, I can also respect the fibers of the wood and have a more natural shape for the part I'm working. The final goal of this area, I will not do all the work today, is just to show you how to solve a problem of a root, like here. The final goal is to go inside and almost split this root in two. So in a few years, the sides will start rolling and growing back in. So they will look like two live line and two roots rather than just one. So always starting from the outside and chiseling away the wood to the inside. I can also work if I have space in the opposite, so I can reduce. You see the part that was chopped originally when the tree was collected, and working from the top, I can easily remove the wood, and in the meantime, I can dig inside of that area of the roots. This is with chisel, it takes a little bit longer, but in my opinion, for work like this, the final result will look a little bit more natural than working with just a Dremel or a Makita with a big bit. Also, the other thing is this one. The problem with conifers, when we want areas like this to regrow on itself, to reheal, is if we go with electrical carving tools, with the rotation, the carving tools tend to burn the wood, and so the creation of the calum, the rehealing, it will be a little bit longer because the cell of the wood are a little bit more damaged. If I work with my chisel, and then I put some cut paste, I can always have a much stronger rehealing on the part I'm working. So you see already, you see already from the front, I can see 1, 2, 3, and 4 roots that give us a nice and stable nebari. But now already, by the difference between the part with the bark and the part that I remove, these roots look less aggressive than before. And also, these areas will match with the other areas that we was digging and hollowing inside. The trunk is completely hollow, as you can see. I can put my fingers. This is an interesting detail on the cedar tree. They tend especially when some upper part die in time, they tend to create these hollow trunks. And now I can work a little bit before getting into the wiring part. I can work a little bit of this section. You see, we still have a lot of dead wood from when the tree was chopped originally. Lo vuoi fare tu? No. Lavora tu la parte. Faccio io? Okay. So the same here. What I want to do, I want to recreate the taper up here to what is my leader, and I will keep the lines just to the side branches, acting as you know, the original top of the tree died, and then the tree regrew a new top, and the trunk start hollowing up. So I want to remove this dead wood like this. So from underneath.
Mauro, how will you treat the dead wood after you do carving on deciduous? Will you be putting a treatment on there to preserve the wood?
So I normally let the wood, when I did the first basic, you know, carving here, I haven't done anything. The final goal here is to lose all the dead wood, like what's happened in nature. You know, Carpinus has such a soft dead wood. Then in you know, few years, a dead branch will just decompose, and so that's the reason why I like to have this hollow part as a result of some damage that the tree had during its life. So what I do here is removing most of the dead wood and just leave the hollow part. I'm not again, I'm not interested on keeping what we call for conifer gin, because the dead wood will just disappear in years. Is impossible to, you know, hold on the dead wood on a Carpinus like this, because it's so breakable, and it just rot away very easily. You see, by especially removing the frontal part in this area, I want to show the hollow part in, and also rebuild that taper up. You see, so the idea is to remove this section and also this section here, so I can have visually a clear division between the left part of the live line going to these branches and the right part going up to this section. So the good thing on working with the chisel is also that you can, you know, rather than cut the fiber of the wood like you do with a Makita or another bit, you can just break away a part of the wood, and that operation is more natural, because it's almost what's happening in nature when a tree starts dying back, and then you know, with the time the parts start breaking apart. And this is a little bit what I want to try to mimic by working with my chisel on the dead wood.
Mauro, we have another question from a member in the chat, and they asked, when you collected this as a stump, how long do you leave your cuts on the larger branches to allow for carving and dieback?
So this tree, as I said, was collected 3 years ago, and already last year, so a year after collection, I did the first carving, basic carving on the wood. So the wood in the top part was still almost green. As you could see, when I did the carving on the root here, only the last part I will show you in detail. You see the root was chopped here, only probably an inch died back, but all the inner wood was still green. Obviously, this is not as strong as the side part where I have a root pumping up energy, but still is green. So this is good because it can start rehealing as it happened here, for example. You see the edge of the old cut here when I remove the basic stump. You see already the tree start rolling around a nice column. That this is what I want to obtain from the tree, especially when I have a big branch and a branch that I let free to grow close by. Because you see, differently from here, this part was cut, and then obviously the tree died back. It didn't made any column in this area. So probably the tree is just thinking to lose this section. So probably in the future, I will extend the hollow part to this section here, and then I will get the rollover of the rehealing probably around here. It's pretty evident. It's difficult on camera probably, but it's pretty evident for me to see where I have a stronger fiber here because they are connected to this root, and weaker fiber because obviously those fibers were chopped because they normally was going to go up on this section to give energy to the stump that I removed. Okay. So you see, in terms of strategy, what I was thinking is as we plan, today a type of work to give a second step to this tree. In terms of strategy is when we collect a material like this, that is, as the member said, a stump, just the base of a taller tree that probably was, I don't know, 15 feet tall, more or less, in the side of the forest. We have to give and to have that imagination of what we want to obtain in time. Working deciduous and working conifer is such a different type of work in different terms, in terms of programming, in terms of technical work, in terms of how we allow the tree to grow. Because as I said, we are just starting from a trunk and we are building everything. And every time we rework a tree, and this is the exact example, by removing a necessary part and letting grow necessary part, we try to build what will be the bonsai one day. This is not still a bonsai, it's just a material, but I'm removing part that are not necessary for the final design, and I'm allowing and I'm improving other part to grow to create what will be my bonsai. So also when we remove the wood, see, we have to care a little bit about the taper. That's the reason why I'm removing that central part to reveal a little bit of taper in this area. Some part of the wood are still pretty resistant, even if it's a deciduous tree, but you know, the wood is pretty solid. Some other part you see here, especially in the inner part where the wood was in closer contact with moisture, the wood is pretty soft, easy to remove. You see here. And then now that I remove the frontal part, I want to do some work on this area here, so I can create, you know, a taper up here, and then I want to get rid of this section that is annoying me, and also is a lot of distraction when I look at the tree. So I can work from the side and remove. Actually, dammi il fessuratore. Because this area, basically all these areas to go, I can use my bark splitter, because here I had to work inside and it was easier to work with the chisel. But here with my bark splitter, because it's an outside area, I can just chunk out pieces of that wood and remove them. And then eventually the part I would be not able to remove with the bark splitter, I can do with the chisel again. Vieni di qua per favore. Ah, no, però vengo. Tieni giusto dietro la mano, per favore. Grazie. There is any question, guys? Okay, so you see that already that I'm taking off those parts. This section will look nicer. Taper, especially on these trees, taper is something we have to dedicate time to rebuild, because imagine going from a tree that was 15 feet to a bonsai size tree. We have to chop a lot of the trunk off, and in these trees, the central part of the trunk is always the most cylindrical one. So it's good to remove this section, because we can focus the attention to what will be the natural prosecution of the trunk line up from the base to the apex.
We do have another question in the chat that's
okay,
related to deadwood, but asking specifically about using lime sulfur. And it says, I've always had this question: when you use lime sulfur to on a tree, how do you prevent in subsequent days the chemical from washing into the soil when you water the plant? Isn't that dangerous for the plant to have that chemical in the soil?
Basically, we have to think that lime sulfur is a fungicide and pesticide together. So basically is not something that can kill the tree. Obviously, if we pour on the roots the lime sulfur pure, it will burn the roots because it's too concentrated. But that is something that will happen also if we pour on the roots any liquid fertilizer also by not mixing it with water. So lime sulfur is used in agriculture for, prevent fungi disease and also other animal disease. So when we treat the wood of a tree with lime sulfur, we always mix that in part with water. I do normally 3 parts of water and 1 part of lime sulfur when I protect the wood on conifers, because I want to get that a little bit more gray, gray-white color that is typical of, for example, juniper deadwood. But when I work with the deciduous trees, I don't want to have the deadwood too white. So generally, I tend to mix the water and the lime sulfur at least 5-to-1 or 6-to-1, just to have protection, but don't end up with such white, brilliant deadwood, shiny deadwood. So you see, just turn back on the front. You see that from the front, here we are, from the front already getting rid of this section of the old deadwood, we was able to rebuild the taper from the trunk line up to the main new apex that I let grow last year. There is a little bit more of a refinement to do. Mi dai il tronchese concavo? So now that I took away, most of the deadwood by the chisel and the chisel and the bark splitter, I can use a concave cutter, and just you see here, I can remove a little bit more of the edge of the deadwood like this. Also doing that and eventually biting in with a knife the cambium on this area, I can obtain a nice rehealing in the future. So almost I can think by letting this grow and reducing this part that this cut will slowly close off, and I can work on getting this section much better. Obviously, as I said, is a question of time when we work on the deciduous tree. It's not just the result straight away like when we work on conifer, because conifer is easier for a short-term result, because we can bend the branches, spaghetti the branches around and get a nice shape. Is something we are not able to do with conifer, for what I said already at the start of the presentation, for the thing that we have to remove all the defect and not allowed to see any defect on the trunk. And also because the branches of a deciduous tree tend to be less flexible than the branch of a conifer. So you see, I reduce as much as I can this section, and now we can better appreciate the transition from the trunk up to the branch. Something that will help also will be allow this branch to grow up and thick up in the side of the trunk, and we'll create another line up here. So now that I revealed a little bit this part, I can already mark the exact front I want to use as the main front of the tree. So I was using a little bit of time taking care of what I consider two of the main defects of the tree and getting them better. They will improve obviously in time. And now we can start talking a little bit about the wiring part of this demonstration. So you see, we have different type of branches. We have some strong branches, especially this guy, and a couple of guys from the back. You know, those branches were never wired before. They just develop and just shoot straight up. Other branches were already wired once, just to give a little bit of natural movement, especially the branches in the lower part. I always tend to wave down and up again, trying to create a kind of a little natural shape that a deciduous tree have. I don't want a branch on a deciduous to just go down and create a pad, but always I like that, you know, for the lower branches to go down and then relift up. That is something that they naturally do, so they don't have this conifer shape. So you see already this part here, and some other branches in the top were wired. So what we're gonna do, we are just rewire everything again, starting from the thicker branches and moving out to the thinner one. We're not gonna wire all the little guys. It's not necessary now. It's not a refinement, but it's just okay. Okay, it's just a second styling. So we have a little bit of the primary structure set, but we have to keep working to build that structure and start building also the secondary structure. So what we're gonna do with my student, we're gonna start putting a thick piece of, questi puoi toglierli, ti tieni solo un tronchese da filo, ti serve un tronchese grosso, okay? So the strategy of wiring is this. We have always to know which branches we want to pair. The best way to wire is by using a piece of wire is pairing two branches together. So we can have always a nice anchor between the two branches. And then we can start with the rule of two. So one piece of wire, two branches. We can start dividing and subdividing what is I can consider a system tree into different smaller systems. And always using that rule, inside, outside, or lower branches, upper, I can subdivide the tree until everything is wired. So I will have my two students working side by side. Prenditi, dagli un tronchese da filo, per favore. Ecco qua. So generally, when we work with thick gauge, I like always to measure the wire I will be using between two branches. So generally, when I cut the wire, I like to use a piece of wire that is a third longer of the total length of one branch and the other branch. So I know that with the twisting, I will have enough wire. So I cut the piece of wire for my student. And then this is Ferdinando. And then in the other side, let me push the guys back. Here we are. Okay. And in the other side, I will have Matteo, that you will take care of this part. So you will start by wiring this branch with this one, starting underneath. Okay.
fai vedere bene. Metti dentro.
Okay, it's very important the anchor. So we always need to anchor well the wire and then run the piece of wire outside. I don't want the big wire. I don't want to have the big wire all the way out to the tip of the branch because I always want the transition between the different gauges. So restarting from an inner branch, I will go and wire the outside. I can show you. So now that I have, let me come closer. Here we are. So now that I have the structural wire here, I can restart from an inner branch so that I know I want to move outside. I go and anchor. And then I can connect this inner branch with one of the two outside ones. So doing that, I will always use the previous piece of wire, in this case is the thicker wire, as my anchor, and then 2 by 2 grow other 2 branches coming from questo.
Allora, adesso vedi con questo, fai questo con questo, e dopo con questo più piccolo fai questo con il più piccolo.
So I always give directions to my students. So I know exactly where I wanna put the branches. So I'm the one deciding the anchors on the structural branches because according to the direction of the wire, I will be moving the branch to give the natural shape. You see already that only with 2 pieces of wire, no,
Questa e questa, e dopo questa e questa.
only with these 2 pieces of wire, I can give already a natural flow to the branch. What I suggest when you shape the cedus tree, apart trying to create always nice wavy branches like this one, is always to move the branches in different height while you create what we can call pads. But a pad on a conifer is very, very different from a pad on a deciduous tree. I like to call, when I shape a decidus, I like to call what I create like clouds because they look more natural, like a cloud is. So the branches go down, up again, down, so it waves, and the same the smaller branches does in different height, because also in nature they will never align flat. Geometry is typical of a conifer, is not typical of on a deciduous tree when we look at it.
Vediamo. Perfetto, hai sbagliato. Stai uscendo orario, devi continuare orario.
So
We had a
every
quick
time
question about
See?
how long you would expect to leave this wire on.
So this is a typical question. The reply, the correct reply, in my opinion, is as soon as I see the wire biting in, I will remove the piece of wire that is biting into the branch. I never remove the wire too early because otherwise the branch will not get into position. I can allow the wire to bite in a little bit more aggressively on a conifer because the conifers are easier to reheal if we let the wire bite in. On the cedus tree, is better to not allow the wire to bite in at all, because especially because we will tend to show these trees in winter with no leaves. If we have any scar mark on the branches, they will be always eye-catching, and they will be always very bad to see on our tree. So we have to be very careful. But for sure, if I see a piece of wire biting in this branch, I will not remove the 100% of the wire all over the tree, because sometimes if I bend the branch a lot, that branch will tend to grow faster and stronger than other branches that just get gently in position. So I always have to check on the wire of my trees. We know, or we need to know, that there are periods of the year, part of this growing season, when it's easier than the wire bite in stronger, because are those grow waves. So like end of spring, end of summer, especially, are those growing waves when generally branches tend to thick up. So those periods are, sì, devi legare ancora questo con il filo grosso che parte da qua. Questo e questo.
Qua vado con grosso.
Sì, usa quello. Okay. O questo, se è più grosso.
Sì.
Matteo was asking me the pair, because they're always afraid to mess up the pairs. So I always say, you see, Ferdinando was wiring this branch here. I will show you. Here we are. See, good step, good angle. And then you restart from the inner branch, this guy here, to this outside one. And then next one will be this one here with the top, and then these two. Always 2 by 2. So starting from the two main one, 2, 2, 2, and 2. Easy. It's like a computer language. Ok, adesso fai perfetto con quello lì, fai questa e questa, e dopo questa e questa.
Insieme?
Sì, vai su, non c'è problema. Okay, so that's very important. I know for sure that in my place, May is the period where I have most able to check on the wiring, especially on the trees that were worked during the winter season, especially, you know, structural work like this. Refinement is another story, because when we refine a tree, we only use a fine gauge that generally can stay much longer on the tree, 2, 3, 4 growing season. But when we do structural work, and we do structural work on thick branches, that wire will tend to bite in the next 3 months generally. But again, is also according to the species, is according to how, you know, strong was the work, the manipulation, and is also according to how much we're gonna fertilize these trees in spring. If we are still in a growing part of the life of this tree, where I have to create the thickness, I have to create structure, I will be growing, I will be feeding this tree heavily, so very high in nitrogen. So probably the wire will tend to bite in faster. When I keep control the strength of my trees, again, the wire can stay longer. Any other question, guys?
I was curious if you had done any pruning on this tree except for removing branches that you don't want. Are the branches, have they been shortened at all?
No, because last year that I was imagining that all these structural branches that you see now on the tree, last year they were as thin as this one. Let me see if I can. You see these branch? So everything was this size. So I was only interested on giving the first movement and then let grow as much as I could all the structural branches. So that's the reason why you see now the tree is very extended with a lot of energy, because I was letting the tree, grow free all the past season, thinking on this point. That's the reason why I said it's always important to have a schedule. We have always to think, what is the next step? What I will be doing next year? What I will be doing in 6 months? What I will be doing in 1 year? This is always important if we want to develop fast and successfully trees, especially from scratch. Very important. Otherwise, we tend to waste time. If I wire a branch and the branch is still not thick as I want, and I prune the branch, I slow down that branch. So the process, all the process will slow down. Now that I gain a certain thickness in some part, and I will be moving those parts a little bit, I can start compressing the tree. So I have already a lot of energy from inside. I have a lot of hormones that they will start growing. So I will not waste the energy in the outside that I don't need now, but I can already start a little bit work on the volumes, not only on the size of the branches, because I already have almost the size I like on the tree. So it's always a process. As much as we are able to program that process, better will be the moment we will, perfetto. Better will be the moment, better will be the moment when we have to do a certain work. So for example, talking about this section that I reduced now to recreate the taper. Last year that I just did a brief carving, this top was almost nothing of what you see now. So I didn't want to stress too much the wood with a lot of carving. That's the reason why I just did a general carving and then I stopped. So I also can have always the tree strong and reacting properly. And now on the second work, I could do a little bit more because now this part is much stronger than last year. Any question, guys?
We do have a new question in the chat asking about your soil mix and whether you use Akadama and whether you have any opinions about turfis.
Okay, so now there is a lot of talking about turfis and Akadama, especially online. I don't have this big experience of turfis, apart of what I know from my clients in US, but generally here in Europe, we use a lot Akadama. It's easy to get and it's not so expensive. We only pay 10 euro per bag, so it's pretty decent price. You know, the characteristic of that makes Akadama so good compared to lava rock, pumice, kiryu, is the capacity of Akadama to hold nutriments for its ionic, cationic capacity. For the cationic capacity. So if a particle of nutriment flow down from the grains of soil and get in contact with Akadama, Akadama attracts that particle, and that particle of nutriment stick on Akadama. And so after time, when a roots will grow on that part of soil, will find that nutriment and will suck it from the akadama. This is generally the capacity that akadama has, differently from pomace, for example, that we call inert. So what's happened is that if I have a tree in pure pomace and I fertilize the tree, only the particle of fertilizer that touch the roots and are able to be captured by the roots stays. All the rest will just flow through the grains of pomace, and watering after watering, they will be washed out of the pot. What they say, I'm not a chemical, and again, I never tried surface in Europe, so I basically don't know. C'è un grosso incrocio qui. And I don't know, is that also surface has that ionic capacity? So is a good substitution for the places where akadama is difficult to get, or eventually where akadama is way too expensive compared to surface. There are other people claiming there are other type of soil able to do that same operation as akadama. But actually, from my experience, I was always relying my, growing method with akadama and pomace. I even don't use lava rock because my place tend to be very wet in spring and early autumn. So I want to have my trees in a very drainy soil. So, you see, for example, on these Carpinus is on a mix of pomace and torb. So it's a 50-50 pomace and torb. Is good pomace to give air, and also because it's a deciduous tree, torb can help me to hold a little bit more moisture during the summer period. That is a little bit stressful period for deciduous tree. Normally, when I start moving my deciduous from the growing container to a bonsai pot, I shift from torb, come si chiama? Torb, from torb to akadama, because akadama, apart holding nutrients, is also able to hold moisture much better than pomace, for example. So if I want to have extra moisture to the soil, I had more akadama. So generally, generally talking, my deciduous tree in final bonsai pot, they end up 70% akadama, 30% pomace. My pines are in 70% pomace and 30% akadama. And then we go with trees that are in the halfway, so like spruce or juniper, where I tend to have them in 50-50 akadama and pomace. This is generally what I use. Then obviously we have always to consider a tree according also to the amount of original soil that it has in the root ball. When we start with, collected material, we have a part of the original soil that generally is clay or other type of soil or garden soil if we have garden trees. And we have to shift that soil to the good soil we use for bonsai that always have to allow the roots to breathe. Sì, vede? Occhio ai cosi, questo ancoraggio fa schifo. So now the guys are experiencing some anchors. You see here, for example, so we have always to be sure that our anchor is solid. So this is not a good anchor. We try to avoid looping around the big trunk with the wire, but we have to be sure that the wire is nice and tight on the first part. Otherwise, we can't move the branch because the anchor is weak. Every time I try to move this branch, the anchor will start to detach. So what we have to do, rather than starting from a branch and go up here, we have to eventually anchor in a branch that is almost at the same height. So we can reach the branch from a lower point and from that lower point anchor properly. Ok? Adesso lo sleghi, parti da qua, ti ancori qua e da sotto ci vai. Bene. So it's always good if we have to correct some part, it's good to explain why we have to do in a different way rather than in the way that was done. So also for my student is always understanding, and it is a process of learning the correct way to create a solid structure on our wiring. This is very, very important because again, you know, if I want to wire these two branches, there is no reason I go all the way around the trunk. If I can avoid that, is much better. But I need to be sure that when I wire the two branches, I have to start from a very solid anchor, in this case underneath, and doing that, the two branches will be wired properly as I'm doing. And then when I position them, my anchor, even if it's very short, is solid because it's pushing against the trunk. This is very important. Any question, guys?
There is a question about fertilizer and what type of fertilizer you're using.
Okay, so again, it all depends on the stage that our tree is. Tu sei quello del filo 30 km o zero. Se qua ti devi ancorare. Sorry guys, I'm coming. So qua ti devi ancorare, sai che uso un pezzettino, Ferdinando, devi un attimo essere più coscienzioso, non possiamo buttare via chili di filo. Ok, adesso lo premi e ti ancori bene, vedi? Okay. So I did again. So it's always according to the stage of development that the tree is. On a tree like this, when I'm building foliage, I'm building structure, I'm building thickness, I will be giving the tree a lot of nitrogen. So I use a fertilizer here in Italy. In Italy, it's called Prodigy. It has 16 in nitrogen. That's the reason why I can obtain nice, strong branches like the one you see. And also another thing, if you give nitrogen, you improve the growth of the tree. But in the meantime, the inner part of the tree don't get weak. Because if you don't give, if you have a young tree and you are, developing a young tree, but you don't fertilize enough, the problem is that the tree will have a lot of energy in the outside, but it will be weak in the inside. But when we grow bonsai, we want to have the tree strong all over. Because the moment we're going to shake the branch and then prune the top, we want the tree to be already strong and restart from the inner branch because those branches have energy. We don't want to risk that we prune a strong branch and then the tree struggle to restart all the process of creating auxine and growing hormone to recreate inner strength. So giving high % of nitrogen will always help to have the tree reacting properly. When I start working on the maturity of the tree, that means in 3, 4, 5 years, when the structure is set, all the branches are in good position, and I have just to grow smaller branches, I can slow down the amount of nitrogen and give to my tree a more balanced fertilizer. Normally, I use Anagokoro, BioGold, those Japanese one. We have a good European one as well that has a pretty balanced numbers. For example, there are the good numbers I can say is for spring, try to find a fertilizer that is generally 544, and then eventually for autumn you can use a 354, something like that. So those numbers will always have help to have a good balance between the three micro elements. Plus, on my trees during the growing season, I will give always micro elements that are always important for the trees. The trees are not using as much micro elements as they do for macro elements, but it's always important to add those micro elements to the tree. That's the reason I use Super Thrive. That is a mix of acid humus that I spray on the foliage of my trees, and they absorb them, and slowly they can use what they need to be nice and strong, to have that nice dark green color, you know, produce a lot of nice branches, and you know, eventually, if they have to develop, keep developing to become good trees, or in case they are already bonsai, I try to maintain and improve their maturity every year. It's not easy to maintain very mature trees because when you reach a certain level of maturity, there is a lot of competition going on in the branches of the tree, because imagine when we can reach 7, 8, 10 order of ramification. That is not only primary and secondary ramification, but is a lot of different, you know, orders of ramification. We have always to be sure that we have enough food so the tree will give energy to all those small branches, even the little weak branches that they don't have enough light sometimes. But if they are strong and well maintained, they will be doing well along the season. Otherwise, again, if we have a very mature tree and we don't fertilize properly that tree, we risk that the tree itself will do a selection of the branches, and obviously it will start dehydrating and letting die the weaker branches just to move the energy in the stronger ones. That's physiology, easy. That's the reason we have always to understand the stage of our trees and understand the need they have according to the part of their life they are going through. Any other question, guys? Can you understand my bad English? Perfect. Silence is the best reply. No. Another important thing on wiring is you see, for example, this branch that was allowed to grow free in this position, it grew kind of against the tree rather than outside. So especially when we wire, with aluminum that is not as strong as copper, we have also to use a little bit the strength of the wiring while we position. You see, while I wire, I also move the branch in the direction I want. Otherwise, if I wire the branch in the direction it's growing and then I try to move it, it will be much difficult. Okay, well, okay. So we are on a good way on wiring. We are maybe 70%. Cosa stai devi legare? Ce la fai legare questo con questo?
Sì, questo
Da sotto.
Questo qua lo andrò con questo qua.
Sì, fai questi due e questo lo ancori qui.
Ok.
Again, strategy, tu li puoi fare con questo. Again, strategy talking. We have this area. Matteo was asking me how to wire these guys. So I suggested him to wire these two guys. You see, starting from underneath. So Matteo is doing his anchor. Stai un po' più dentro qui, perfetto. Inside, so always one end, one branch clockwise, the other branch counterclockwise. So anchoring underneath and going the two direction in the two branches. If any time you wire a tree, you are sure that one branch is one direction, so clockwise, and the other branch is the other direction, so counterclockwise. You are also sure that you are performing the connection, the anchor between the two branches in the proper way. This is very important. Cosa stai legando adesso? Sì, ok, è un po' grosso, però non importa. So I help a little bit the guys putting a couple of pieces of wire. In the meantime, if you have any question, guys, let me know. Basta. Se fai l'ancoraggio, devono andare insieme. Non puoi legare.
When you get to wiring smaller branches, how are you avoiding the seesaw wiring effect?
The what?
Like when you get to wiring like two smaller branches together, sometimes the wire seesaws a bit, and I'm having trouble understanding the strategy for avoiding that. Like where you touch one and the other one moves.
I don't understand what is a seesaw.
Oh, I guess the anchoring between two smaller branches when you get to the smaller ones.
So if they are too close together, you mean?
Yeah, that sort of thing.
So generally, you know, it's not a big deal if the anchor between two small branches is a little bit weak, because the small branches generally are the ones that we have to move less, and eventually if we think that they are a little bit weak, the anchor is weak, we can also, when we position them, we can also finisci questa punta qua, ti riancori, ancora lì sopra. We can always hold one while we put the other one in position. My advice is, you know, if we start wiring a branch and then we have a lot of small branches, I try to avoid wiring the first little one with the last one, and then the second with the second last one, because otherwise we end up that in a section of a branch, we have 5 or 6 wire going on. So eventually, even if you have to do a little cross with the fine wire underneath, is not a big problem. So either way, if you have 2 branches like this, let's do an example so we can understand. Let's imagine these 2 branches. You see they are inside. I hope you guys can see. They are inside of the same gauge, on the same step. So if I want to wire these 2 branches, I have 2 options. One option, mi tieni il telefono un attimo. Allora, can you see, guys? See, perfect. One option is going over and then clockwise wire 1, pull the wire nice and tight, and wire the other one counterclockwise. So doing that, even if I don't have a round of wire around the trunk, you see, I move one and the other one stay, because the anchor between those two branches, even if they are considered bar branch, is nice and tight. Otherwise, if you feel that you want to do a little bit tighter, you can even go underneath and re-anchor almost by crossing underneath the branch, and then wire the two branches together. So you basically have those two options. Again, on fine branches, wiring is not a big deal. Okay? Let me make this perfect. Any other question, guys? So you see, we are working our way from the lower branches up and from the inner branches out, and getting everything nice and wired. Another interesting thing is when we wire and style, or so for example, wire a branch and then already give the movement, or when we wire everything and then at the end we style. What make us choosing one solution or the other? For myself, is most of all two things. One is about with who I'm working. So today, because I'm working with two students, I like to use the technique of getting all the tree wired and then position the branch. Because working three people on the same tree, otherwise, sì, ce l'hai qua, questo, non perderti. So in this case, it will be annoying if I wire and I style the branches, and then one of my two students will come after me, and it has to move the branches because he need to wire differently, or you need to add some wire. So it's better to get everything wired, and then at the end, when everything is wired, we will style the tree. Otherwise, I can say that when I do a first style, a rework like this one, when I still have to do some structural wire, I like to do all the wiring and then at the end sit in front of the tree, move the branches, put them in position, and prune whatever is not necessary. When I do a refinement, I generally work branch by branch. So because I don't need to use thick wire, but most of all thin wire, I wire completely one branch, I create my pad, and then I work my way up to the top. So generally, this is the difference. Sometimes also, when I have, for example, a conifer that is very difficult in terms of bending, for example, to compress the structure, sometimes I do the bending and the wiring for the bending first. And then when the tree is set and compressed, I work the different parts and solve the tree from the lower branches up to the top. It's always according to the strategy we decide to use. And this is good because we want to set and give less stress to the tree. We don't want to wire a branch and then move that branch 3, 4, 5 times until we are in the final position. That's the reason why I like wiring. And then all of a sudden I sit and I set the position and I don't touch the tree anymore. Every time we touch the tree and we manipulate a little bit for the tree is a stress. So as much as we can be careful with that stress, better is for our tree. Dove hai preso questo filo grosso?
No, non ce l'ho.
Any question, guys? So we are getting up to the top. So because I still have to give a little bit of movement in the upper section, I wire with a little thicker wire, and actually I will double it a little bit. The good thing on working on aluminum when we wire the Sidus tree is that always we can a little bit over wire, so use a bigger gauge for some branches to have that extra strength that otherwise aluminum wire not give us. And even on the bigger gauges of aluminum is very easy to manipulate and put in position. If I have to work with big gauge of copper on the thicker gauges, it tends to be a little bit or too stiff. So that's a problem, especially working on the Sidus tree where we don't have thick bark and we don't want to damage that nice delicate bark that they have. Mi fai questi piccolini, questo finale qua, qua su niente, lo taglierò qua. Okay, so we are almost done with the wiring. I will give you a close-up. So you see everything nicely wired from inside outside. We can always remember we can use some big branch to become an anchor for some branch that start close by. We have nice branches in all the different height of the tree. Generally talking aesthetically, I like always to have some frontal branches higher than 2/3 of the total height of the tree. So I want to show part of the trunk, the lower part, and then create a nice green mass coming forward to kind of not show too much of the trunk on the way up to the top. You see, we have a lot of length in the section that Matteo is wiring. This will create almost a second trunk line. This is typical for the Sidus, a branch that has light enough to develop will transform itself on a second trunk. That actually was something that this tree already had in nature, because this was a trunk growing here and almost like a second trunk for the tree. That's the reason why we have a beautiful transition between the first part of the nebari and then the second part of the trunk. But now we have to rebuild that using a smaller branch, because otherwise this, if I would have kept this, this was almost the same size of the main trunk. So aesthetically not pleasing. Any other question, guys?
Yes, I have one. What is the best time of the year to do this kind of severe work on, well, not just hornbeam, but deciduous in general?
I love, so if you have a greenhouse, you can work on your deciduous tree all over winter. My advice is if you have to do big cut on some branches, it's better to do at the end of winter when the energy of the tree is already pushing out to grow, rather than at the end of the season when the tree will go dormant, because you risk, if you cut two big branches, you will have die back because the sap will go down during winter because the tree go dormant. So let's say at the end of winter is the safest period to do heavy work on deciduous tree, but also on conifers, especially, for example, if we want to do heavy bending, for example. This type of work that is not stressful at all, because it's most of all wiring and positioning most that heavy cutting on big section of the tree. It will be a little bit pruning, but it's nothing compared to heavy cutting. So this type of work you can do anytime during winter. Again, better if you have a greenhouse, because obviously when you work and you manipulate, especially small branches on a deciduous tree, they tend to be susceptible to cold. So if you don't have a greenhouse and then you put the tree directly outside, you risk that those very small branches with cold wind, especially during winter, they risk to dehydrate, and in spring they will die. The other thing is about the buds. In this period of the year, buds are very strong. So when we manipulate the branches with wiring, the branches are well attached to their branch. So it's difficult to damage them. If we do a lot of wiring at the end of the season, going to dormancy, those buds are a little bit weaker. So we risk to lose a lot of buds if we do a lot of wiring in that period.
So has this been in a greenhouse?
This has been in the greenhouse. It was just out of the greenhouse for the last, let's say, 10 days. Since the temperature get better, even if it's still a little bit cold during the night, we still had some a little bit freezing nights, but I love to give some freezing to my trees before the growing season start, because I feel they accumulate and they tend to build more strength rather than wait my deciduous to grow in the greenhouse and then move them out after they grew. I feel during the year when I move them in the greenhouse in autumn after a couple of frost, and I bring them out a little early in spring, and they still get kind of a chilly weather, they tend to be stronger during the growing season. This is my personal experience. Non serve legare quelli a posto, legami questo, Ferdinando, Matteo legami questo e mi leghi questo finale qua. Almost done, 3 branches to go, and then I will do the styling. Che ora è? Perfetto. Bene.
If we have a moment, let me ask, for a tree like a Carpinus, what types of pots do you like to put this type of?
So generally, I'm more, connected with the idea of having the deciduous tree in glaze pot and conifer in not glaze pot. Sometimes I like the combination of these kind of raft glazed for some deciduous tree where they have a little bit wild image. I like to be more conservative on those deciduous tree when they have that natural flow, the natural feminine flow. So I like to use a little bit sparkling glaze for those trees. But when they have, for example, here we have privets with good deadwood, we have oaks with crazy movement and very rough bark. For those type of deciduous, I like to use some kind of a dirty glaze with rough and crazy glaze. So non serve questa prova, non serve. No, questo e questo finale qua. La subo a taglie. Bene, recupera I fili per favore. So we are done with the wiring, and now I can sit in front of the tree. Ferdinando will take the phone and we'll keep the phone like this so you can see. So let me put. So you see, guys, so first of all, guys, I want you to notice that while we was wiring, we also open up all the branches in different positions. This is very important because we want to already know more or less where the branches will go. And then I always start from the lower branches. I like to wave them out and up. You can easily see on this branch. Generally, the inner little branch I use to create volume and my cloud, and the outside one, they do a little bit more of the finish. So now that I start having some nice movement and some thickness on those branches, you see, I can start also pruning those branches. The same I do here. Always a branch, I can go up and down, create my wave, and move the branch. The two lower branches that I can call the welcome branches, they tend to always open up and welcome the observer eyes according to my front. So this has to go a little bit open. Then I always start from my lower branches and work my way up to the top. So I need to move this guy. I can start shorting this branch and gently move the outside branches here. This is still a lower branch. This guy here. I want to create what I called originally clouds, because I don't want to do pads on my deciduous. Here we are. So again, always I try the thinner branches to use inside to create volume, and the longer one create the structure of my pad. I have this inner branch here that can come in the front a little bit and start filling this negative space, and moving always outside and waving out. You can see how I try to give all the line this nice movement. So you can see, guys, the natural movement of the branches gently going up and creating my cloud. Okay. We have another nice branch here. The other trick is use the wire to manipulate the branch and put in, and put in the branch in the correct position. And then eventually, if I have just a leftover end, like here where I cut, I just can put a piece of wire and direction that part out. So you see, we have already nice movement. Same story here. Those frontal branches will come here and start creating the connection between the lower part and the upper part here. Because they are frontal branches, here we are. I need to be a little bit shorter than the side ones, because otherwise I will have too much green coming in front of me. Same story here. Nero. Always when I prune back, I try to have a substitution in the line of the branch that will take the energy from what I left and will keep grow in the direction. Here we have our top. I want to move this branch here and then out. Nero. So you see how I work my way from the lower branches up, creating nice movement and visual connection from the different section of the branches, and also trying to have the best and the natural shape. I don't like when I see one of those deciduous with that ugly conifer shape, because people try to mimic a pine when they work on a poor Carpinus. The upper branches will always have the tendency of growing up. Even the lower branches will do the same, because the apical dominance on a deciduous tree is always present on its branches. It's not like a conifer, when along the years they will start, the lower branch will start losing apical dominance. Here always branches Nero, have apical dominance. Here we are. So I'm not interested now on the fine small branches inside. I just wire the outside ones, because the inner branches will have to strengthen out and get a length to be able one day to create their own hierarchy of branch. Now, because you see, I want to still build length on this guy, thickness, sorry, on this guy. What I do, I remove all these. Abbiamo un panno nero o un qualcosa di nero? Sì, giralo. Ah, però facciamo un disastro.
No, non lo appoggio, glielo metto sopra.
Just check the last. Fuori non abbiamo niente di nero? Un sacco nero dell'immondizia.
La mia.
Perfetto. Tieni così, lo mando qua. Questo.
So here we are. Can you see the tree? Well, so you see the nice base going up and creating all lines until this part here. We have Matteo holding the black so you can have the idea. I just let this branch on the top to grow and create more thickness in this section. And then everything is nicely growing up in the direction to create a nice and natural look for this Carpinus. Any question?
With the extent of work that you've done on this tree, when will you repot it next?
Next year, probably.
Next year? Okay.
I will dedicate this year still to create more thickness, more structure, create a little bit more inner branches. Now the structure is on a good way. And next year I can start going in a more shallower container. So doing that also, I will have a tree that will generally stay drier. So it will be not as strong as now that he has a more deep container. But it will be not a problem because I will have to build more fine branches rather than thick branches.
And has it been in this container that we see now since it was collected? And
since it was collected, exactly. It was collected and put in this container. So you see the upper long leggy branch now is evident. This will be my part to create thickness, but everything now is flowing nicely in position, good proportion, good position of the branches, and I hope my explanation on the wiring strategy and also the help of my student was good.
This is fantastic, Mauro. I really appreciate it. I think the tree is going to be fantastic. Want to thank you and thank Matteo and Fernando.
Thank you.
Appreciate all of your work, and I know you've got a 12 o'clock demo with another group. So I want to thank you all very much, and I'm sure that all my friends and colleagues here are as appreciative. So thanks so much. Any last questions before we?
Can
let
we
these
see
guys
this
go on to the
tree later in, let's say, next year?
Absolutely, guys. I will keep you up on the evolution of this tree. Absolutely. Actually, let's give you a 360 of the tree.
I have one quick question. The leader, the shoot that you left at the top, you took out a lot of the buds along the leader.
Yes, because I don't want the tree to grow here, but use all the energy on the top, not waste any energy here. That I don't need branches. I have already my lower branches that they will form what I expect as the canopy, the final canopy. Don't need anything more here. I just need these long guys to shoot and create a thickness.
So the length of that branch is going to create more thickness than the side branches will? Okay.
Sorry again?
The long length of the top shoot will create more thickness of the trunk than the side branches?
Yes, absolutely. Because all the energy is here, is evident from the quality of the buds. And if I leave this guy, they will a little bit suck energy from the leader. So it's better to remove them and let that part grow.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I have to go. I'm off for the next demo.
Thank
All right,
you.
Thank you,
so
Mauro.
much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much.
much.
Have a
Ciao,
great
ciao,
day.
ciao.
Well, we will let Mauro step out to go on to his next demo, but want to just thank you guys all for joining, and I appreciate you all asking questions. Happy to have any feedback or thoughts or quick questions that are club related before we all go our separate ways.
Thank you very much. Have a good weekend. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Joe.
everybody.
And thank you, guys.
Good seeing you guys. And we did record, so we'll make sure that we post that and share it in some way in the near future.
Thank you.
Anybody join us for the board meeting at 1, you're more than welcome, and we'll see you all later. Have a great
Using
weekend.
the
Thanks,
same
everybody.
color, the board meeting.
I sent a different link
Okay.
for the board meeting in another
Okay,
email.
good deal.
You should have it. Let me know if you don't.
Cheers.